Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today I want to talk about Henry Wirz. He's remembered as the commander of the prisoner of war facility Camp Sumter, better known as Andersonville. During its operations between February 1864 and April 1865, about 45,000 Union soldiers were held there and about 13,000 died. Of those who survived the ordeal, a number emerged as no more than human skeletons, suffering from malnutrition and various camp ailments. Photographs and eyewitness accounts outraged the Northern public and prompted investigations that led to charges leveled against Wirz, a trial that ended in his being found guilty of war crimes and sentenced to death by hanging. A Swiss-born immigrant who'd settled in the South and opened a medical practice, he joined the Confederate Army in Louisiana, worked his way from private to captain, and joined the staff of Brigadier General John Henry Winder, the officer responsible for prisoner of war camps. Wirz's arrest came as the result of a comment overheard by a Union officer named Captain Henry E. Noyes, an aide to Major General James H. Wilson. Noyes testified what he heard and what he did next at Wirz's trial in Washington, D.C. Noyes relates details of the arrest, the reaction of Wirz's family, a bit of diplomacy on his behalf, and the dangerous journey north as he escorted Wirz to Washington. I want to read to you the testimony, the riveting, somewhat graphic testimony. So here we go, in Noyes' own words. About the 1st or 2nd of May, 1865, I was ordered by General Wilson to Alabama to take the news of the repudiation of the Sherman armistice to our forces in Alabama, the nearest command being that of General Grierson at Eufaula. I'm going to pause. You students of the Civil War know about Sherman negotiating a peace treaty of sorts with General Joe Johnston in North Carolina, it being disapproved by President Johnson, and Ulysses S. Grant had to take the news back to Sherman. So on we continue. On my way there, I passed through Andersonville, where the train, a special one, stopped to wood and water. I got out of the train there and walked around. I noticed a crowd collected and saw a number of our men who had been prisoners there, very sick. They were evidently preparing to go to Macon, where General Wilson had ordered all the sick to be brought. I saw a number of officers and soldiers in Confederate uniform, some of them appearing to have authority. 2 or 3 of them had pieces of paper which they were presenting to the sick men to sign. That first attracted my attention, casually. Finally, I got upon the train, and as it was about to start, I heard a remark that attracted my attention. It was to this effect: "Hurry up and sign these paroles or you'll die here anyhow." I looked out of the window and saw Captain Wirz. I could not swear that he made the remark which I heard, but I have heard his voice since, and I think it was his voice. As neither Captain Wirz nor anybody at Andersonville could have known that the armistice was repudiated, and as it was evident that they were paroling our sick men, I was on the point of getting out of the cars to remonstrate on the subject when the whistle blew and the train started off. The sick men there were mostly so sick that they had to have men supporting them on each side. Very few of them, if any, could write their names, but simply touched the pen as the paper was presented to them. When I got back to Macon, I reported to General Wilson what I had seen, who told me I must go there again and arrest Captain Wirz. I left that day or the next about the 6th of May and took a party of men with me. As I had to stay overnight and as there were no accommodations at Andersonville, I went on to Americus, about 10 miles beyond, where I remained overnight, coming back to Andersonville on a freight train next morning. There, I accomplished my mission. That is, I arrested Captain Wirz and gathered together all the records which I thought important, except the hospital records. These I did not take because Dr. Roy said that they were not yet complete, and that if I would send him down some clerks, he would see that they were completed. This I agreed to do. The immediate circumstances of Captain Wirtz's arrest were these. I went to his house and saw him there. The family were about him, that is, his wife and 2 daughters. It is a very hard thing to take a man from his family, and particularly so in this case, as Mrs. Wirz and one of the daughters at least were crying and having considerable trouble. To pacify them and to do the thing as quietly as I could, I told Mrs. Wirz and also told the captain that they need not distress themselves at all. That, on his arrival at Macon, if General Wilson was satisfied that he had done no more than his duty and had simply acted in accordance with his orders, he would probably be released. That was the sum and substance of the conversation. General Wilson did not direct me to make any promise to the prisoner or to give him any safe conduct, and I do not consider that I did. He was conveyed to Macon under guard and remained there under guard. He was not on parole at all. I have no doubt that my conversation might have been construed by those who were very anxious that it should be so into a promise that he would be returned, but I had no doubt in my mind that General Wilson would hold him as a prisoner. I intended to convey to him no promise of safe return, but merely intended to pacify his family and himself. He was very much excited. These are all the circumstances which I remember, particularly connected with the arrest. He remained under our headquarter guard until about the 20th of May, when I was ordered to convey him to Washington with all the Andersonville records, including the hospital records, which General Wilson had sent records for, including the records, all the records for, and the flags for which General Wilson had captured in his campaign through Alabama and Georgia. I had trouble all the way till we came north of the Ohio River on account of our men who had been at Andersonville recognizing the prisoner. I have read in the newspapers that I endangered my life to protect them. There is a misconception on that point, but I do not think the prisoner could have got here alive if there had not been an officer in charge of the party. At Chattanooga, where I was stopping temporarily, I sent him to the post prison to be taken care of, as I knew that outside of that he would collect a great crowd. He had on good, fair-looking Confederate clothes and a hat, and was pretty decently dressed generally. When I saw him again, I hardly knew him. All his clothes were stripped off him. He had only part of his hat, no coat, a very dirty shirt, a portion of a pair of pants, pretty badly torn, and shoes. Whenever I got him, where there were any of our soldiers, I had to hurry him off and get him under a strong guard in order to save him. I had trouble in getting him on board the boat at Nashville. I think that but for the guard I had and my personal presence, they would have taken hold of him there, and if they had got hold of him, I do not suppose he would have ever reached Washington. He was afterwards disguised. At Louisville, he still had his extremely dilapidated appearance, which, if there was nothing else, would have attracted attention. He said that he had some friends there. Between those friends and myself, we succeeded in getting a complete suit of black and a beaver hat. He also had his face shaved clean, which entirely altered his appearance, so much so that we were not troubled at all after that. I do not think he was recognized after that, although a good many soldiers must have seen him, particularly at Cincinnati. So there you have the story of Henry Wirz, something of a backstory of how a chance remark led to him being arrested, being attacked by Union soldiers who either were at Andersonville or who had learned of the atrocities, and the work of Captain Noyes to get him safely to Washington for trial. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.